Hey, we're back. Or rather, I'm back. Um, who are you? Person that's normally a chicken?
I am Tsuchi or Tsuchigumo. I am somehow one of the more prolific homebrew creators for Stars of the City, um, which
Somehow.
is something that happened entirely by accident, but I took it and I ran with it.
Yep, that's the chicken right there. Um, I'm Ham. If you're here, you probably watched a few of the previous videos. I do things TM, such as automating the character sheet, running a West March. What else? I also contribute on homebrews and stuff. I feel like I do a lot. Like it's hard to sum up. Anyways,
Yes, you have made some major contributions to some of the homebrews that I've made.
yeah, 100%. So I guess what we're here talking about, like a less formal form of SOTC content. We're just gonna just yap about homebrew, our thoughts about making it, and just things that might be helpful if you want to make homebrew. And so I guess Zuchi, you can start us off since I feel like you're like more of a homebrewer than I am. I'll be honest here.
Um, I guess so because even outside of Stars of the City, I've always done custom content from I've done custom magic, which I know is a thing that Jaka does. I've done stuff for a bunch of different tabletop RPGs. Uh, I'm familiar with Lancer. I'm unfortunately familiar with D&D. Um, but in general, uh, this system was one of the ones that I've had the most fun with, and one of the ones that I've stuck the most with in terms of making homebrew, just because of the systems underneath being so interesting and fun to mess with.
Oh, 100%. Like the module system and like the way that they set it up means it's super easy to create homebrew, and also the fact that the base system has a lot of room to work with.
That was one of the things that drew me into when I made Arachne, when I was first working on Arachne, I had not actually played a full round of I hadn't even done combat yet. I was going purely on vibes, but just the experience that I had with other tabletop kind of made it possible for me to do that. And I'm going to be honest, it was also good that I got in early back when there wasn't a lot of homebrew available, and what was of a different nature. A lot of it was, I'm not knocking this kind of content at all, but it's like, okay, these are homebrews that are maybe a little more comedic in nature, maybe a lot overpowered.
Waffle
Um,
House.
Waffle House is
Waffle
definitely the
House.
one that I'm thinking of. Um, and so I said, you know what, this system is really open. There's a lot of design space that hasn't been explored. Uh, I'm just going to strike out and make something, and hopefully it'll be a little more balanced. Hopefully it'll be, there's still some stuff in the base book that isn't, or there's still some stuff in the games that isn't represented in the base book. There's some mechanics that I think could exist that don't have like a direct one-to-one representation. I might not be the guy for it, but I want to make it and see what happens. And it turns out I was actually the guy.
Yeah, the brief aside about Waffle House, I feel like I can tell this show this every single time it comes up. This is Line Cook Larry. He kind of so there's a skill that does infinitely scaling damage based on crits and like auto crits because of this like, mechanical extension that increases crit range and also costs basically zero light because it refunds the light. So when we're talking about Waffle
Li-
House, it's like
I'm sure Line Cook Larry could take on an Arbiter.
probably like if you give him time to like hit things, sure.
Yeah, if it's a brawl in the Waffle House and he's got some time to punch some of the customers before he gets to the Arbiter, that's a done deal.
Hmm. As it turns out, like the fact that this check in a good round with two speed dice got like plus 12 every single round. means eventually Line Cook Larry can kill God.
Now, you might think when I say that I set out with the intent to make something that was not this broken that I succeeded. Let me go ahead and quash that by introducing Winnow, particularly Old Winnow, a skill that has been rewritten 4 times and is still a problem.
Yeah, like I want to take this opportunity to like highlight really with Homebrew the importance of math. So you see, Winnow inherently has a kind of well, this used to scale quadratically last I checked, right? Like
Yes, that was what made it so insanely strong.
yeah, because I think it was multiplying the damage by the count of fragile, and fragile increased damage. So like if it dealt like 4 damage normally, and there was 4 fragile on the target, it would deal 9 times 4 damage. And then if the number of fragile increased, I don't know, like 10, it would deal a total of like 15 times 10 damage. And so this is what we call quadratic scaling. And so like if we quickly pull off Deathnos, right? Um, lovely thing here. So like we're gonna put some window calculations in, I guess, because I feel like that's like the best way to like really show the point. So like a
Oh,
normal
absolutely.
skill scales something like this. Maybe it has like a damage multiplier, right? Like it does 2 times damage, like which is still outrageous, but like it's still normal, right? So it would look like this depending on the dice roll. However, Winnow, depending on an outside factor like I want to say would have like fragile, right?
Yeah,
Would look something like this. Let's just say A is equal to right, and then so Winnow would be the dice roll, right? So X plus 4, but also like plus A and then times A. So like normally this is like fine, yeah, because normally this would be fine, right? But then like if you start increasing A, it um yeah, this is
it
not
starts increasing at a really dangerous rate. Um, where like the more you put into it, the more you're getting out of it. Not at a 1-for-1 rate, but like, okay, I put 2 fragile into it and it's pretty good. But then I put 3 and it's really good. And then I put 4 and it's insanely good. Like it's not
let's
you're getting a bulk discount on how good the skill is.
oh yeah, that's great. It's awful. Here, you know what? I'm gonna put this in like your wait, is there a logarithmic scale? Yeah, there we go. This has to be logarithmic in order to properly show this, but so you see how this thing like this stays relatively tame around like you know linearly, whereas Winnow, literally, if you like have fragile, it bumps up hundreds of times. This is like ridiculous. And so whenever like you're doing damage calculations and stuff, keep in mind that don't make something exponentially scale because like these numbers over here we're hitting aren't HPs that you ever want to put on an enemy. Anyways, I feel like that's well enough to
Oh yeah, like
demonstrate.
that goes to illustrate one of the most egregious mistakes I've ever made. Like, there are more. Don't get me wrong. There are plenty of ways to make mistakes that I have walked directly into. I guess one of the takeaways that I want to give people here is like, not that you should be like crazy concerned. Definitely go in with, knowing that these things are possible and to avoid them. Don't make the same mistakes I have if you can avoid it. But when you're creating homebrew, you're you're gonna run into things like this. You're gonna accidentally write something that looks super cool, and you're like, "There's no way this will possibly break anything." And someone is going to find a way to shatter it and make it just completely broken. It's going to be the most powerful thing in the setting. It's gonna be the thing people remember. And the important thing there is like that's not something that should necessarily discourage you. Just see what it's doing, rewrite it to the best of your ability. Sometimes you're going to have to kill your darlings, but know what you're going into and know that it's always possible to balance something. It's not possible to balance something that doesn't exist yet.
No, that's very fair. Like as another example of like some things that to like watch out for while we're on the subject. Inescapable gaze, be careful when you're doing relatively funky stuff like changing how skills fundamentally work, because do you want to tell the story of how this wording came about to you or should I? Like,
Yeah, so this wording seems kind of innocuous at first. Um, it's like, okay, that explains what's going on. It's a little wordy for what it is, and there is a reason for that. It's because, one, as written, you could technically create an infinite loop with the skill where two people with it could intercept an attack, and then the next person could say, all right, well, I'm going to intercept it instead, and then they just keep doing that
yeah,
forever.
because it used to be not have this line. It's just because in theory, in this system, you can intercept an interception. It's like a weird, very niche system thing because, to be blunt, like the rulebook for this, I love Jacquevong. I think the content's great, especially like SOTC. Some of the rules in the main rulebook are not well thought out when they were written, and still are a bit, we'll say, just rules as written really weird. And so it led to this thing where theoretically this could, as Tucci mentioned, go in an infinite loop. Because what would happen is, so we have character A here. Let me try and get out a combat tracker. Sure, let's, right. Yeah. By the way, this is what normal people, I guess normal people use for their sweet eye. So let's just say like, Jane, John, and Jan are fighting. Jan. Okay, so let's say Jane and John are on the same team, and then Jan is not on their team. So what happens is Jan is going to target Jane with an attack. Um, sorry, a skill. And then John sees this and uses inescapable gaze to intercept it. And so now the attack is targeting John. But then Jane sees it and uses inescapable gaze to intercept for John. And they just kind of infinitely do this because inescapable gaze at that time did not have any limitations over here regarding usage. And so it got changed to this purely because an infinite loop was bad. And then, do you want to talk about where this line came from?
I'm trying to remember where this line came from,
It
but I know that it was something involving like the ability to use it multiple times was making it broken, I believe.
Well, yeah, because like the other thing is another like this commits arguably one like a cardinal sin of homebrew and is one of the strongest skills in the current Black Label book because of it. You can use it without using a speed die. And also it is zero light, which means it is essentially completely free to use by default. And so the reason why this after use is here, which removes the aggro and bodyguard so you can't use it anymore afterwards, is purely because it's there so you don't just intercept everything with your character. Because you can just do that with inescapable gaze. And on top of that, for a zero light skill, inescapable gaze is in fact very strong. Even like on space, even if you have max check, a 1d6 plus 5 on zero cost is near the best you can do in this system. Anything you want to add to that? Like,
Um, yeah, like the other thing that I want to kind of counterpoint to some of it is inescapable gaze right now is fine, even though it's still really powerful. When talking about balance, it is okay for skills to be maybe a little better than certain others, especially when their use cases are a little more niche. Um, but in saying that, you definitely have to be careful that they are not completely broken. Um, balance is definitely an art, and it is an art that I have consistently struggled with. Um, just because usually I'm not putting as much thought into the math or the worst case scenarios when I'm writing these skills. Um, but these two examples are really good ways of showing like I wrote something that was completely broken on release. I went back and changed what was wrong with it, and now they're still really good skills. They're still really nice to use. They still fill the same role that I was going for. Um, and it hasn't really like the West Marches is a really good uh, thing to lean on because yeah, Inescapable Gaze is really really good still. It's not on everyone's build. It's not something that is like crazy meta defining. There are players out there that are just going to build what they want and not really care about that. But even players that are like, I'm going in and I want something really powerful. I want the strongest I can get. Not everyone is gravitating to this because there are other tools. There is other stuff they can do. Um, balance is not a like balance is not something that you can perfect, and having a little bit of granularity, having some things that are maybe a little spiky, uh, actually tends. I find players kind of enjoy that more. In most cases, as long as it's not something that's just so broken that GMs can't develop an encounter around it.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. Like again, like this is like when we're talking about balance, I feel compelled to like after that point and agree like this is not a PvP online game. Like the players being very strong is not a problem until it becomes hard to GM because ultimately we're here to have a good time. Like and talking Inescapable Gaze as an example, you have to put a good amount of work into it. For example, this is my Inescapable Gaze, and I basically worked the entire build around using Inescapable Gaze the best it can, and it's also eating like my rank 3 module. Like you have to put a good amount in Inescapable Gaze if you want to like abuse it to its max extent. But like as an example of like how strong you can make like some of the stuff if you do put the work in, this is a flat 12 most of the time that inflicts paralyze and has crumble on it, which is slightly scary that you can just use this without a speed die.
It is very strong, and I definitely see like there are ways to use it in sort of unhealthy ways. But one of the reasons why I made so many mistakes with interception skills early on is because I was practically begging players to use them. Um,
Yeah, no,
like
very fair.
no no one was looking at aggro, so I was like, all right, I do think it is healthy for like systems that you want to emphasize things that are healthy for the game, like players intercepting attacks for other players. The things that you want to emphasize, you do kind of want to cut them a little bit above the curve. Marilyn Rose is another great example. That one was, I think, just a numerical nerf because it was just
I
really
think it
good
used to
for
be
its
over
cost.
here. Like, and the
Yeah,
trouble with
it
like
was like plus
this,
five or something.
because I think I was the one in charge of this series of nerfs, and the main thing problem over here was because if you put a one cost skill at 1d8 plus 5, if you look at the base rulebook here, it's taking a while to load because there's a bunch of images on it. The base that I always like to do is what if I put stronger and potential on it? The same as the normal skill. Because singular strike in the base book is a 1d8 plus 3. If this is a 1d3 8 plus 5, there is almost no reason not to just take Marilyn Rose over this normal base single strike at higher level. And that's just where you don't have like module restrictions. And I think a lot of my philosophy when I was whacking the uniques inside Black Label Wolf was around I do not want taking a unique skill to be strictly better than just taking a normal skill base ever. Like that is just a relatively unhealthy dynamic to have. Another example of this is Volkasat still kind of
Yes,
has this problem, like where I think this is almost strictly better than just taking a single strike. But it used to be worse in that like this used to be a 1d8 plus 5, I think, and this was a 1d6 plus 1. Um, and
that
that
does sound correct.
and that was just very gross, and so that's why I got whacked. And now it's like Still extremely good because you got like a free block die on top of your singular strike. It's just not broken. Like a lot of the
This is
nerfs I made
actually this is
were
actually one of the biggest lessons that I learned. Because when I wrote these things particularly, like this is one of the first sections that got added to Black Label. This is honestly, Arachne wasn't even finished when I started Black Label. It was just most of the way there. And because I had only ever played at low level and I hadn't considered uh, what the game is like at higher levels, once you get more speed dice and once you get more access to modules, in my head, I had the idea that, okay, unique skills are hard to put modules on. So I can bake in like a module or two worth of value and it'll be fine. And that's not really true because as soon as you level out of that low level environment, they get like, they become way too dominant. So unique skills are not free places to put more power. It's more that they are to do really cool things. Um, I don't necessarily agree that they are purely for effects that would be completely busted as a module. I think it's okay to have uniques that are just like, oh, it's burn plus charge in a somewhat efficient format. Um,
barge.
Good old barge.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's that is one of the lessons that I can impart to any potential homebrew makers. Unique skills, don't make them any, like, try to keep in mind that they do need to be roughly equal to normal skills, at least in potential.
Another thing is, this is one of my children, so I feel compelled to discuss this. If you are making a powerful unique skill, lock out the tags. For instance, Thousand Chance in Full Bloom, I specifically lock out the check tag over here purely because this could have been used on something really nasty, and I also lock out the on use tag over here because this could have been gain safeguard, gain poise, and again could have been really nasty. Reuse skills are really tricky because not only is the dice being reused, you get the on use effect and the after use effect. Because so I very deliberately designed this reuse skill specifically to lock out the two most problematic tags on here, on use and after use. And also, because the way I set it up, the cost is one, it only has one cost skill on hit tags. A way to modulate a skill's power to a certain level is to lock out tags with effects of a certain power. Any notes on this, Tsuchi?
Um, Actually, yes, I do want to take a look at extreme focus for doing functionally the same thing, which I
Yeah,
think
sure. Give me a
is
moment.
run back.
Is this
I
should
think
be
it's
here?
run back.
Run back.
Yeah.
Yeah, there. This
So
one.
extreme focus is a skill that could have been really broken, but so far has been. I, some people have found some really like powerful things to do with it, but nothing that's like insanely powerful. Um, Nothing more powerful than what you can get in other ways in the system. And extreme focus is just a 3-cost skill that gives you 4 poise and becomes one of your 0 or 1 cost skills. Um, if you use a 0 cost, you get your after use back. If you use a 1 cost, you don't get those tags. And this was more elegant than I had intended, I will be honest, because a lot of the really broken things that you could have done with it, you can't get away with because it's eating the on use tag, it's eating the after use tag, and the only things that you can do with extreme focus as a skill are relatively unique. Like you can put some of the gear shift effects from Ratio on it. You can put the effects that don't have a tag, like I think it's frightening in the base book. Um, there
Frightening?
are still things you can. Yeah, I think it's a rank 1 where it might be a rank 2, where if you have a certain amount of sinking on the target, it lowers their die values.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, I remember this. Yeah.
so there's some things you can put on extreme focus that are still good, uh, but it's not really broken. And again, even in situations where you're copying Switchblade, there is for those who are less familiar with the system, there is a module that allows you to drop the cost of a skill by 1. It would normally also drop your light regen the next turn by 1, but that's an after use tag. So using extreme focus lets you cheat and keep your light. Um, Using that on something like Switchblade is really good because now you're getting 5 dice on a theoretically 3 cost but 1 cost skill. Um, and that's really really good, but also so is having like a walled off that ends on like a D12 plus something, or like it's powerful, but it's not game breakingly powerful. And extreme focus is basically an example of something. What I would say is it's a really crazy design. It does something wild that not a lot of other effects do, and it has mostly been fine. It's good, and I wouldn't have known that without testing it. So
Yeah, I will say like the fact that like we are running a West Marches which has lots of players, lots of traffic, and most importantly, just lots of people making builds and testing them out in sessions is has been a heaven send for just being able to like figure out what works, what's balanced, what's not balanced inside Black Label and all these other homebrews because we got a lot of useful data. Like,
I guess another point that I want to make there is Black Label book is huge, like ridiculously huge. Um, I never necessarily even intended for it to become this big. I just kind of kept adding to it over time. If you're starting out on Homebrew, if you're interested in making Homebrew, don't necessarily look to Black Label in terms of its sheer size. I legitimately don't think that anyone should be following in those footsteps. Um, Focus in on what you want to make and try to pare that down to like probably a page or two's worth. And I think you'll get more mileage out of that than trying to become the absolute monster that is Black Label Book. At most, I would say like Arachne Workshop is technically probably as big as you want to go in most cases, especially if it's like your first actual homebrew.
God, like there were very good ideas in Arachne, but also like I think one of the things that are still haunting us is the fact that lock and unlocked are still kind of weird mechanics for lots of people to wrap their head around, despite them like being really cool. And I think like if
It's
we had to design them from the ground up again, they'd come out in slightly better and comprehensible form.
Oh, absolutely. Like those two are it. Arachne in general shows that I was not as experienced, and there's a reason that I split off and did Black Label that was a little bit more experienced. And lock and unlock are just so weird in how they function, because it's not even intuitive. A lot of people come to me and say, "Oh, well, if a skill isn't locked, that means it's unlocked, right?" And I'm like, "Well, that's a great point, but no, it doesn't." um, and then there's the whole thing with when lock is applied, which made sense when I was building it, but has since become kind of a nightmare. It should just apply immediately, but it doesn't.
Because it has to be
It's
started next scene.
yeah,
It has to be started
yeah.
next scene. Like, and that also leads to a lot of weird stuff, especially like with unlocked effects like key step, which is next scene, where you can kind of float the trigger in Magic the Gathering terms and figure out what you want to target with that unlocked or locking effect sometimes.
The other really weird thing about locked is if you use a skill that locks itself, you'd think you would be able to use it once. But let's say you're a character with 3 speed die. On one scene, you can use that skill 3 times. That lock is not going to apply until the beginning of the next scene, and then you're going to have a stack of like 9 lock, which is a just a nightmare. Um, but because of the way that it's written, it lets you do that.
Mm-hmm. As we have like a first homebrew, I think despite like having good amount of participation in the community, I never really had a reason to. So, but the first one I had really had an idea for was block because block dice didn't get a lot of love when compared to evade. And so I essentially created this thing, which is book of block where it's just a bunch of modules just centered around block dice. Like it's a very small thing. But it was good. It was focused. Lots of these were pretty well thought out. In retrospect. For instance, arrest momentum is a very interesting anti-tech that has just enough applicability, like poise, charge, strength, just enough applicability against most enemies that it will eventually find its usage in most cases. And then also I had block mode, which is burrow and bash, a bunch of other things. Like it
I
was
will
small,
say
it
that
was good.
this this shape of things, like here are some modules that shore up a weakness in the book or do something interesting. This is probably the platonic ideal of homebrew for this system, and it's also kind of what people get most excited about because they look at it and they're like, "Ooh, I could put this on the skill that I made the other day," or "Ooh, I could build a character around this." Um, so doing something like this is a really good starting point. The other thing that everybody gets really hyped for is ego, skills, and abnormalities.
Oh
Which, if
yes.
you're if you're more used to encounter design, that might be your starting point. But
Yeah.
those two are great starting points. Again, I lead by example of what not to do. Uh, don't make the first thing you do an equipment system because that went over really great. But man, did I had to reword that whole thing 3 times because I was an idiot.
Yeah, I think Black Label book, we had to iron out a lot of things to get it like ready for mass usage, and even then it's like it required a good amount of patching.
There are definitely still like weird corner case things in Black Label book that work mostly because we say they do.
Yeah.
um the one that I can think of that's not a perfect example, but it's just the one that I can think of right now is I added a on use inflict trimmer, which only works in the West March because we function on skills can target if they want to, even if it's like a defensive skill.
It's just
Uh
because like even in normal cases it creates really weird corner cases where like, oh, I'm targeting an enemy. That's great. It uses a skill. I really want to use my defensive. But because I targeted before, it now restricts what skill I can select in the clash, which is a really weird dynamic, which encourages you to always hold, which I personally don't find super healthy.
I definitely like targeting with defensive, but it does create situations where people who aren't in the West March come to me and say, "Hey, I want to put heavy on utility, but utility doesn't target because it has no dice. So how does that work?" And my only answer to that is it works because you want it to.
Yeah. Like I will say that I think right now most of the Black Label book is running on Westmarch, which is on a older version of the rulebook with a few tweaks, just purely because there's a few like quirks with the way that it's officially set up that leads to weird cases. Is I guess the best way to put it, right?
There's that, and there's also just functionally Black Label is so much content that any update to the base book introduces a whole lot of questions that we have to answer all of a sudden. Um, like even if you just look at not even necessarily some of the balance stuff, but like the introduction of new tag timing, um, that would require a major rewrite and a lot of do we want to keep it the old way? Do we want to do it the new way? And that is a major reason why we're using a sort of older version of the core rulebook.
Yeah, definitely. And then like there's a whole like reason why like there's like the feats system is weirdly set up, which I understand exactly why it's set up the way it is. I think it's very reasonable. It's just that it has unfortunate implications where it kind of pushes the balance of player characters. So they're getting a super big power spike around level 4 because some particulars, and also high level um, feat system characters have this thing where their power is dependent on the stats they invest in and the number of high stat requirement feats available for their high stats. But like if we start talking about that, we'd be a bit far off the mark. So for now, it's
Yeah,
just yeah,
I think ultimately the only like the best summary of that is the newest updates have made builds kind of unbalanced in terms of when they gain power and how much they can actually gain. Um, and since we're so used to the old system and we've balanced everything around the old system, having to deal with those sudden jumps in power and the sort of roughness of that system just it wasn't worth doing at the time that it like maybe later on we can do a major rewrite, but I'd like to only have to do one.
Yeah, very
So
very fair. Like, Black Label was like, I've always felt like it was kind of singular in the fact in the in that manner that it has lots of interconnected effects. It is very highly technical, and also it manages to like have this amount of bulk and technicality without having anything too broken in the sense that like the outliers are relatively minimal.
oh yeah, and I've definitely had help making it that way because again, I do not necessarily have the best eye for balance, but I love a good technical system that you can really sink your teeth into. I wanted to give everything a little bit more of an identity. I wanted to give uh, really cool things that you can do. That's one of the reasons I was so proud of Extreme Focus. Um, Another example is poison in general. Um, when I was designing poison, I went into it. I'm saying, okay, poison is never going to see a clash win. It's never going to see like to apply poison, you have to hit the target. That's its identity. Um, and I also said, okay, well, poison is kind of like worse bleed in a lot of ways. The only good thing about poison is that it decays slowly. Other than that, it's just kind of again worse bleed. So I'm going to give it modules that do cool things. Like there's one where I believe you spend poison to convert it into paralysis, which is a Arachne. Yes, Innervate rank 2 from Arachne. Um, so poison is easier to keep around, so it's got cool effects, but to apply it, you've got to hit. And I went into designing it with all of that in mind. I think it came out very well because I had a very concise idea in mind. One of the other really cool things about poison is it's got a little bit of high speed. It's got a little bit of like if unopposed. Everything about poison is kind of thematic, even though it's pretty simple overall. Other mechanics get really difficult. They get really, or not really difficult, but they get really in depth in terms of what they can do. There's some really tricky modules out there. Um, but I think poison is really well designed just because it sticks to its guns and has a clear identity.
Yeah, I mean, continuing like if we're talking about the basics of the system, there's only so many effects you can have in the system because it's determined by essentially basis of it. You have HP, you have stagger, you have speed dice, you have speed, you have light. Any effect you have is ultimately just decreasing or increasing one of the or more of the numbers based on some level, some conditions. Especially ailments, a majority of ailments are like either they're dice fuckery, like they increase or decrease like a certain number. Dice fuckery specifically, like there, for example, I think paralysis. It means you roll a one on your dice. You can fuck with the dice. You can fuck with HP. That's burn and poison. You can fuck with stagger. That's tremor with tremor bursting and sinking. And then like with regarding to fucking with speed dice, there's the new burn self burn page which has super critical, which gives you additional speed dice. Like there are finite amounts of effects that are possible in this system because the system can only accommodate so many things. Like like it's not advisable to add a new bar. Like for example, like there's APs, there's stagger, and there's also I don't know, like a blood bar, and you have to like deal with this blood bar. It's like very often the best idea is to work within the limitations of the system. And you can do a lot with it, like with poison. And I think a lot of this comes down to restraint. Like Poison has a very specific identity, as Sushi pointed out. Like Can't Clash has some high speed stuff, have some unopposed stuff where like a lot of it is tricky, and it often what something does not have defines it more than what it does have. And if you make something that doesn't have a certain quantity, but also make it very good at the other things, despite not having a unique effect, it will be very, very unique to play and it will feel very unique. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't have a ton to add outside of like I could technically go over every single status and what I think about it, like burn being just the simplest to slap on anything or so on and so forth. Um, I do want to say that you can get kind of complex with your statuses, but it's better if you're going to go complex 9 times out of 10 with self-applying statuses like ratio and radiance and things like that. Um, Fumes, I think, actively gets less attention because it involves a lot of like math in general, like player-sided math, just to calculate the damage. Um, and part of that is because okay, I wanted to port smoke from library, and so I wanted to at the very least pay homage to that effect. Um, but I think a lot of people don't play Fumes because they don't want to deal with that, and ultimately that's fine. It's sort of like if you're a Yu-Gi-Oh player, it's the difference between playing like something with a very linear play style or something that is very adaptive. Not everybody wants to play the really adaptive deck that has 27 different lines and can make a ham sandwich underwater if you ask it to, but it requires like full brain power.
Hmm.
Sometimes you just really want to do a just brainless burn build, and that is fine. I've tried to accommodate both, and if you're the kind of player that is like I actually want to do both of those things, I've got you covered. Just play Rip. I, Rip is hilarious.
Rip was a mistake.
Rip was Rip was my version of Rupture, and it was 100% a mistake because somehow I went into it saying I need to make Rupture less busted, and I made literally Rupture, but it gives you charge.
This is arguably better than Rupture in some ways if you like this one model. I'm sorry, Rip and explain this to me. Explain why you thought this
Rip
was a good idea.
and
Explain
so
why you
Rip
thought
and
this was a good
Tear
idea.
is it is literally the cornerstone of every single Rip build because it lets you go from small amounts of extra damage to big number go hard. Um, but yeah, it's I'm convinced that if you had 4 players that really wanted to just rip a campaign apart, pun intended, they would build all of their skills with rip and tear, and the number just continues to go up forever.
Yeah.
Like there is no amount of HP that will save you against a rip team, and I'm really glad I've never had 2 players running rip in the same game before.
Another thing I want to like say like because as discussing one of my contributions. So ranged was one of the things where lots of people wanted it, and I will say don't be afraid to get weird with it or like make things that aren't like conventionally thought of as I want to say simple slash good. Like remember when I was trying to sell you on the whole clip reserve system, Tsuchi? And at first you
Yes,
were like, "This sounds deranged. We shouldn't do it." And I eventually convinced you.
and and after getting through that point, like actually clip is better, and I kind of wish I used that way back in the Arachne equipment stuff, but I didn't because I was going based off of the existing games, and obviously clip didn't exist at that point. But I was initially resistant to it, but it's one of the best decisions made. So
Yeah, like talking more about this. So basically, when I was thinking about range, I was like, how do I make range not just I keep on shooting until my ammo is gone and then I'm sad? Um, so what I came up with is clip the first time you use a certain skill, you get a certain amount of magazine, which goes away at the end of scene, but you can use a substitute for ammo. So basically, you load in like a clip of like one shot instance, and that covers your one. For the second one, you have to spend ammo for. And so what you can do here with clip is it's really hard to, I guess, how to put it, like demonstrate it because it's something you really have to like build a character with and feel out. But it creates this really like interesting, like lively kind of dynamic where you have to think about your ammo, not in terms of, oh, this is a reserve I'm gonna deplete, or but more like, okay, how much do I want to deplete my reserve ammo? And also it gets into effect with I'm sorry, it goes into effect with your build making a lot as well, because some things are clip positive. For instance, double tap over here, this motherfucker, you get two more magazine than you're gonna spend on it, which gives you excess, which you can use on clip negative things like Barrage, which is a 4 die 3 cost base, which is very good, but also it only has clip 2. So you're going to have to spend ammo or get magazine from another source in order to get that. And I think that's just a very interesting and good dynamic. Another thing I did with this is not keep this sealed off just to range dice. I made Chamber, which is basically you can spend ammo for effects. The timings are pretty complicated by necessity because lots of the effects apply to clashing, which I won't get into. But basically, this means that there's now interplay with melee dice, or rather just normal offensive dice, where you can use your ammo that you got from your range stuff, or just use ammo in melee, and that is very fun. Like, I think like after like the initial hump, the range system over here, like with clip and reserve, is one of like my homebrew things that I've got like the most positive feedback from. Like in
It
general,
takes it takes managing a system of, okay, I only have so much of this like per mission or per session, to, okay, I can generate this and spend it, but I have to, I can stockpile it a little bit. I can spend it all in a hurry. What's best for the situation right now, and how am I going to make up for that later? It's a more involved system, which I think is really good. Um, the fact that some things are clip positive and clip negative make you look at these skills in a different way. Like if these were normal skills, like, oh, I take my cost one because that gives me better light economy. Um, Whereas with ranged, it's like, no, I really want to run double tap so that I can run barrage without having to have some spare ammo sitting around, or, I know for a fact that I'm going to double tap early because I want to be able to pay for barrage. So that influences how you build your skills and characters. This is a very good system in general, and then of course you've got ego passives and things like that make it even more interesting.
for instance, like
I actually I've
Ghost
got a
Load.
character that uses Ghost Load, uh, just because I didn't feel like managing my ammo.
I will say Ghost Load is one of the most interesting ego passive I think in the entire book for me, because on first glance it doesn't seem to do a lot. You're not generating ammo. Like this isn't giving you better ammo economy strictly. It's just letting you retain it. Like which on its surface it doesn't sound like a lot. But what this means is if you're clashing, right? This is the first dice of the sea. You don't have any magazine, or you normally wouldn't, and you want to clash with a clip negative thing, you have to pay up ammo for it. But if you have Ghost Load from the previous scene, you can retain that magazine. And the only thing you have to do in order to keep a stable ammo economy is not, without Ghost Load, you have to use clip positive into clip convective, which forces you into a very specific pattern. Whereas with Ghost Load, all of a sudden, all you have to do is be net clip net neutral. And I think that's very interesting in the way how such a simple line of text and like a relatively innocuous and weak sounding effect in fact opens up so many possibilities.
I have an example of this, although I want to circle around to one thing before I say it because it's going to open a different can of worms. Um, Ranged is an example of something that a lot of people wanted. It's something that a lot of people really liked on release, and it's got a lot of very good things going for it that even the people asking for it didn't necessarily know were coming. Like Clip was not the direction I think a lot of people were expecting. I think they were expecting
Oh
more
no,
of
not at
the
all.
the usual, but the ability to play with range dice was what they wanted. That's what they got, and they got to play with a very interesting system, so that was very well received. Another sort of darling that I want to talk about that I don't think a lot of people have received very well is actually Bloodwell. Um,
Oh, that guy.
I
Yeah.
like Bloodwell. A lot of players don't, and it's simply because I don't think people have been in the right situations to really appreciate what Bloodwell does for them. Bloodwell is sustain, and it's decent sustain at that. Like, health is slightly less important than stagger resist, but at the same time, when you're staring down very scary dice, like when the tables are flipped and your players are not in control, Bloodwell is a very good way for them to hang on to that control. And even though this is something that, like, in terms of reception, Bloodwell's probably, if I were to run a poll and say, hey, what's your favorite mechanic? Bloodwell's probably not performing well in the West March, like, environment.
Oh, not at all.
But it's not something that I'm going to say is bad because one, I personally like it, so I'm a little biased. But two, you want these kind of tools that people don't appreciate until they need them, or that only certain players are going to appreciate. Just because it's more variety. Um, it, certain players are going to appreciate having those niche options that other players don't necessarily gravitate to. And this is kind of a safety valve where if someone is known for running like really brutal encounters, Bloodwell plays really good into those scenarios. Um, so all of a sudden, when the guy who brings Rip on a bunch of dice that are not very big finds out that an opponent is using a, like 12d5 evade, or sorry, 1d12 plus 5 evade, and dodging all of his Rip and then hitting him for a ton of damage, like there is an answer in the book. It's just not one that a lot of people look at.
Yeah, I will say Bloodwell is one of those things where I think it's very frequently misunderstood. I think that might be because they were equating it to Blood Feast. And as like the designer of Bloodwell, it was directly, shamelessly stolen from Bloodborne system of rallying, where if you're hit, your HP bar turns like a little bit yellow, and you have a little bit of time if you attack back to refill it. So the idea behind Bloodwell is an offensive kind of defense. And so I think a lot of people bounced off it because they were coming in. I want to make a Bloodwell build, which is fine. But the thing is, Bloodwell is not Blood Feast. It has a different like name. It operates differently. I think what happens is a lot of people like go into like their builds. I want to make a cool X build that does cool X things with X all the time. Like, and there are a million and a half pages in Black Label Book 4, and I think they're all very excellent. They all do like different things. Bloodwell is not that. Bloodwell is a page that is going there to help you survive defensively, and you cannot treat it like other things because it's not something that is ever good when you're on the front foot. It only ever is good when you're on the back foot. For instance, fill and drain initially over here, right? Um, this doesn't look that good until you realize it's a zero cost, which means it doesn't cost life. And then this clash lose effect is mechanically unique. I do not think there's another thing in skill in this entire book that lets you convert stagger damage directly to HP damage. And so what this does is for really large dice, you throw this in front, and what this helps you do is not stagger from them because this scales with a percentage of it rather than a flat amount. So like bring back like the math, right? Let's just turn this scale back for one moment. So if we want to look at the amount of stagger an attack does to you, let's just take like a normal block dice, right? And then Bloodwell. So you see, like for a majority of like reasonable cases, the normal block dice is just going to be better. Like especially if it's like a reasonable size, like x minus 10. Like you see this, like this is not again the damage reduced is less until you get to 20, and like when we get to those like really brutal numbers or like something that does additional stagger and stuff, Bloodwell starts to come in and just take off ahead over here. Like and keep in mind also that you're converting that stagger damage into HP healing because it's being converted into Bloodwell because that's how Bloodwell works. And so fill and drain, I think, is like another one of those skills that I think like people neglect a lot. You can just put fill and drain on one of your builds, without putting any other blood well there, and it will perform well as a oh shit button. Like, and I think it's just people in general don't like splashing mechanics into their build, which I totally get. Like, that's very fair. But like from a more like free perspective, where like you're a bit more loose with your flavoring, as in like your character doesn't have to be, oh, I'm doing X thing all the time, right? I can have a specific tool, like I don't know, for fill and drain, it's like a shield, right? That is relatively good at mitigating stagger damage, but not as physical damage or something else.
Yeah,
If you
like
really
you
open
don't
yourself up to
have to
that,
be a blood fiend to bring Bloodwell. That's in fact, Bloodwell being so different means that I don't think a blood fiend would necessarily use Bloodwell as much as some of your normal fixers and things like that. Um, and I definitely agree with you in terms of the like build around mechanics. I personally really like things like this that are splashable. Um, it's a little hard to see in Black Label just because a lot of things are I'm because it's what players want. Everything that I've designed, I've tried to actively give players enough to build around. Like you can do a ratio build, you can do a burn build, you can do fumes. There's enough there if you want to build around just one thing for almost everything, just because that's what people really wanted. But I have a soft spot for splashes and bridges. I love having access to more than one mechanic. Um, Bloodwell is a very good thing to splash into. I would probably say that splash wise, you've always got stuff like Poise and Charge. Bloodwell's another good one. Ratio has actually become a really good one,
lock
just
too.
because it's got more options. Lock is always good to splash into. And I think some players have gotten on to like Lock and some of the more obvious ones, but I don't think splashing is as quote unquote obvious as it should be. And I don't see a lot of builds that actually do like not necessarily full multi-inflictor, but I don't see a lot of builds that are like, oh, I'm trimmer and burn or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm like talking about like splashing. Like I recall, this is a challenge that you actually gave me. I asked you, oh, give me like a unique skill and like a mechanic, and then I'll make a build around it. And you gave me, oh, sweeping ripple cut and ratio, and I made this monstrosity that uses
I remember this. Yeah, I do remember this. So it's like, hey,
that
yeah,
use
what are you gonna do with attack weight?
make something so broken I didn't want to use it in a session.
Which, yeah, that definitely adds up. I actually, circling back to ratio, we changed ratio recently. We gave it more toys to play with,
Yeah,
and all of ratio's toys are a little weird. There's not a lot in ratio that's just straightforward, and the few that are straightforward are still a little weird in their own ways. Like starter is just clash win or hit gain one ratio, which is good, but if you didn't already have one, it gives you more. Um, Everything in ratio has one of those weird little kickers on them, and I if I had to pick a favorite child, I think right now it is actually ratio because of that.
yeah.
It's fun to splash and it's fun to build around.
And I think like Sushi and I are like relatively different in this regard. Like what I want to say, to homebrew creators, do not listen too much to what people have to say about your homebrew. Like taking criticism is good, like obviously. Like taking feedback is good. But I think also there's a certain level where you might get a tiny bit too over responsive to it and start like writing things because they're asked for. And that
Yes.
kind of
Let me
sorry, you
jump
go.
in and say,
Yeah.
um, on this front, this is absolutely true, and I found that I make enough mistakes design wise as it is, and that's a totally fine thing to do. Everyone is going to. It's more important to make than to worry about it being the right thing on release. It can always be balanced, it can always be fixed. But when you're taking in feedback about how to fix things, you run the risk of if you just listen to everything everyone is saying without a grain of salt, that is when I've made more mistakes. I routinely find that like when I get in this mode of, oh, I want to I want to give people what they want. I want this to be something that everyone finds really cool. You're gonna make even more mistakes if that is the mindset. You've got to go in with, okay, the people really want this, but here is the identity that I'm working from. Here is just the facts that I'm working from. I want to keep what people want in mind, but sometimes delivering exactly what people want is the worst thing you can give them.
Yeah, because
And
I think that something from games design, right? Like video games, like it's like people are very good at seeing problems. They are horrible at suggesting solutions. Like
there are people who want more rip.
yes, and there's some people that want more things, and like often like in the build help channel inside the Westmarch, I often answer the questions like, well, how do I do this? Like, oh, why you should add this. I'm like, it's already in the book. You can do it already. You just have to jump through a tiny bit of hoops. Like, and maybe it's just like I have a interesting attitude towards my customers, or so to speak. Like, I feel like sushi. Like, if you're the nice one, right? I'm definitely like the crabby artisans. Like, get out of my workshop. I'm doing my thing here.
And like, to be perfectly honest, both of those things are really important to bring. If it was just one or the other, like, this would not be as big and as well received as it is, because at the end of the day, if everything that I wrote was allowed in with no moderation, no math, no anything, it would be broken, and people would leave it beside because they'd be like, oh well, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff in here, but you put this on this and now the game is over. um, by the same token, I am actively ferreting around in the garbage looking for terrible things to write, and then the process of making them less terrible leads to a lot of the intricacies that exist in Black Label. Um, it leads to a lot of the moments where your players are like, oh wait, if I put this on this, it works like this, and that's super cool. Um, that comes from the two sides of our functionally the two sides of the mind, one of which is very like, i'm I'm going to take everything with a grain of salt, I'm going to do this the way that I know is right, I'm going to have hard math and facts. And then the other side that's like, what if I just let Rip have like a +5?
No,
What if I just let players, inflict, what's the worst that could happen? And
and then I'm
usually the
always here to
worst that
be
could
like,
happen is terrible.
I'm like, absolutely not. Like, I think there's so many times, like, I think, like, this really started when, like, I kept on making broken things, and, like, you're like, okay, no, that makes sense, I'll nerf that. I'm like, because, like, I think what I do bring to Black Label Book, like, in terms of, like, collaboration for, like, homebrew is, like, I both know how to break things incredibly well, and also know how to actually fix them, because I, like, understand them at the core, rather than just, like, oh, I broke this, like, and that's it. Like I think usually like when I break something, I try to like, okay, you could do like these three separate things that all address the problem in different ways and have different flaws, right? Like you can test this.
Oh yeah, and a lot of times like it went from, hey, this is broken, like here's something you can do to fix it, and I'm like, either, oh, that's a great idea, I'll implement it immediately, or I get where you're coming from, but I want to do it something more like this.
Yeah,
And then over time we sort of started collaborating more, and it
yeah,
wound up being like we sort of just fell into that niche very well, which
hmm
works out very well.
no, it does. Like
Um,
we made beautiful things together. Like ranged. Though I will say, fucking Cloudbuster. I'm blaming you for Cloudbuster. That piece of
I deserve to be blamed for Cloudbuster. I was playing Etrian Odyssey at the time, so I was like, it would be funny. Let's just port some of the Arbalist skills over, and it's mechanically really cool. It's just a little scary and maybe a little easy to optimize.
yeah. I definitely lots of the like my things are more esoteric. Their strength isn't as obvious. But also, I feel like I'm to blame for some of the most more broken skills in this book because I'm like, okay, like if you have understand the system to like this degree, you deserve a little reward. Like for example, unique skills. Uke's fucked up. Like this thing does not seem very good at first glance, and then you actually read it and think about it, and then it's like, why the fuck does this exist? Or like rather, like how the fuck does this exist? Like, did you thoughts on Uke? Because I think I showed this to you and you're like, oh, that's interesting.
This one is really interesting, and this one has like I routinely describe skills by their quote unquote shape, which really just translates to the vibes of how they operate and things like that. And I really like the way that this one is shaped. You have a this is functionally a response to an enemy that is going to throw an offensive die at you. You're like, no, I'm going to hit this with a really good block, and I'm going to hit you back with extra damage because you dared to throw a semi good offensive dice at me with nothing behind it. Tools like this that have a really specific shape, I think, are allowed to be kind of more powerful, especially when they're not obviously more powerful.
Yeah,
Lots of people read the skill, they don't see where the power is. They're like, oh, that's a really cool skill. It's maybe a little situational, and they move on. And like, that's fine, but this skill can do some really scary things.
I
Against
use
the
this
right
so
opponent,
much.
this is huge.
No, this is fucked
Um,
up because the thing again, like we're talking about map, right? Like I think like as I've like grown, done more homebrew and stuff, I've leaned more and more towards like, okay, but what if like I broke the rules in an interesting way? And over here, what we have is this is a check that effectively scales at cost plus three. In the updated version of the system we use, most checks scale at cost plus two. And also, if we're looking at expected value, which is like the amount like you expect a die to roll, like this is for a two die two cost. This is pretty good expected value. This is expected value 4.5. This expected value 4.5. It's total 9 compared to around the 10 plus 5 strong strike, which is a 9.5. It's only zero point 0.5 less. And for that, it gets 2 expected value in checks. And the other thing is checks are module hungry. And also they often require conditionals. Do you know how many people like build all their enemies with almost exclusively offensive dice? Like,
oh, it's very common. I and a lot of my designs have like I approach it the same way that I do player designs in a lot of ways. So I usually have skills that are shaped differently, but they're very rarely the skill that you should worry about. So even in a design that is conscious of maybe I shouldn't lead an offensive die on every single skill that I have, 9 times out of 10, the one that is leading defensive is like, oh, I'm going to throw this out when the player has something scary. And so I still run into the trap. Like, even a quote unquote smart designer is still going to run into this trap. The A lot of people look at Uke and they're like, this is situational.
this
But what
situation.
they, what they're not realizing is that yeah, it's situational in terms of if your opponent has one skill that this works against. Like if your opponent has one skill that is like a decently good offensive die lead with it doesn't even matter if there's a second die or not in most cases. Um, cool, you now have a too light button to screw them over for it. Uh, if you're running an interception character, it gets even better because although you can't slap heroic on it, you're getting +5 instead of +2 off of a check. What does that matter? You just intercept for someone who can't do the thing, um, and then bonk your opponent for a ton of damage for it. It's great.
Like,
Um,
case in point. Look at this thing, okay? Look, it's quote unquote situation, but the situation is so common, like it's basically like it's rare to be in that, like not have that situation happen. Um,
at absolute worst case, 2 of the 6 skills are Uke just beats it almost guaranteed because building voltage and rolling thunder are both lower EV and by a pretty significant amount, and you can still beat lightning charge with Uke, even if the roll is like only fine. So you're looking at like 2.5 skills that this one skill beats, and then that is an enemy that has one skill with no dice on it that is purely just there to regain life.
yeah,
You have countered functionally half of the encounter. And Sure, that's a Zion abnormality, but that's still really good. Like
Also, like,
there are
look, it
there are
doesn't
higher
change.
level ones that are going to do the same thing.
This does not change as higher level. The designs don't change. GMs don't design differently just because they're higher level. Like this
Yeah,
is
like
like
the
the
numbers
constant.
might get a little bigger. You might be a little more afraid of like you might not be getting 5 damage, you might be getting 2, but it's still like this is going to still work against a wall as well as it is a Zion.
Yep, 100%. Like, and then I will say for like harder enemies, I think while we're on the top subject, these guys, Suji.
um
Oh, oh God! Ask
so
any West
these are the
Martian
guys
who has fought
I was
these
going to say,
motherfuckers.
like we should probably, just in case you're on this video somehow and you don't have context for these guys, um how many level 1 teams have these guys slaughtered already? Like 5 or 6
Six,
teams?
six in a row, and three of them were not close. And I will say it's not because the numbers are large. If you look at these numbers, these are often strictly lower than what the players can do at the same light cost.
Yeah, I have not actually fought the Kurokuma yet, so I am not completely aware of what makes them so terrifying, but I do know the memes because everyone talks about Cumulus Wall like it killed their dog.
Oh, this thing. It's okay. It's because it's anti-big die. Because most enemy design, if you roll high enough with a large enough offensive die, and you keep on repeating that, usually you win. I believe like almost everything falls under the same category. I'm a sadistic
Yeah,
motherfucker. So Cumulus Wall actively punishes you for being a for unga bungaing. Um, and that's why people hate it because it's like it's not that strong. It forces people to play outside of their comfortable play patterns, and that is
yes,
like
like
daunting to some people. Like,
so many people build skills around like I'm going to do the big flashy thing now, and Cumulus Wall punishes them for doing that. Not in a way that they don't get to do the big flashy thing, but in the way that they are not getting as much out of doing the big flashy thing as they would have from making a smarter decision, which is why this encounter is so terrifying.
yeah, no,
It's
it's like
killing you in a way that's not just it's killing you in a very smart way that's not at all cheap.
yeah, it fundamentally asks you, and like I describe this as a tutorial a lot because this encounter teaches you how to play like what I like to call proper Start of the City, which like you have to mind your lighticon, you have to mind your teammates, you have to mind targeting, you have to understand how to balance all of these different factors. Rather than just building your character around this is the big bad thing that the character is going to do, I'm going to spam it until I win. It forces you to actually interact with the enemies. Like, I think that's another thing where I think a lot of design of like some homebrews, like I'm not gonna name names, not like because like it's a bad thing, but also because like it's I don't want to because like lots of them tend to do this in my memory, where they just give you lots of these like big flashy tools, and they're like about making your cool characters do cool things more. And I think there's a place for homebrews like that. Like in fact, there's so many homebrews because like that's a very popular format, and I think that's great. But like in matters of my own personal taste, the reason that I personally love Black Label Book so much is it is cohesive in a way that do cool things homebrews isn't. It has more to it than do cool things. I guess is the best way I can word
Yes.
that. Word it.
I definitely don't want anyone to come away from this thinking like, oh, we're knocking other homebrews, because
No, not
honestly,
at
I'm
all.
not.
I think
There's a
they're great.
place for every type of homebrew, and sometimes I do actively want like there was a homebrew I wrote a while ago that I never actually intended to use that I just filled with a bunch of cool stuff. Yes,
Epitaph.
Epitaph.
This thing.
I just
God, this is cool ass shit.
filled it with a bunch of really cool, ridiculous stuff, knowing that I wasn't ever necessarily going to run it, knowing that there is a specific time where this stuff would be really cool. This is like the oh, we started a D&D campaign at like level 14 where we're basically gods in the universe type stuff. Because sometimes you just want that. Sometimes you really do just want the I don't care how balanced this is. I'm going to be the coolest motherfucker in the room. And there is a place for that homebrew. I also make that homebrew from time to time.
Yeah. I mean, like from my perspective, like it's not like dislike the other. It's just like I think that's very much a personal thing. Like because I feel like, especially if we're talking like a matter of opinion, like homebrews I like, it's inevitably personal taste, and so I can't like detach like what I like from my personal taste, and from a position of like looking at like homebrew from a more like I want to say technical angle. It's like the Black Label book is just the most technically interesting to me because well, part of it because like I wrote it to be more technical and I contribute a lot of the technicality to it. I'd say like
Absolutely.
yeah, like
And
for
it
instance,
helps that I also really enjoy things that are like I enjoy modules feeling a little bit more like puzzle pieces than just flat upgrades. There's a lot of stuff in Black Label that is just I'm gonna do the really cool flashy thing, but that's not all there is to it. There are plenty of things that you have to jump through hoops to get to the cool thing. There are plenty of situations where you're jumping through hoops, not even necessarily to do the cool thing, but to have a really powerful option in a different direction. And honestly, the reason why Black Label is so big and has all of the stuff in it is because I am the type of person like if I'm playing like Armored Core 6, I want every single part and I want to think about how every single part works with every other part.
mhm.
I a lot of people look at this and like immediately get decision paralysis, and that's kind of the point, admittedly.
I will say, Black Label book like if you are in the spot where you're getting decision paralysis, you're getting daunted by it, just pick something that looks cool and only use things on the page and like go from there, honestly.
Yes, the page design is a little confusing and has a few problems in terms of like, oh, there's a charge module on the trimmer page. Why is that there? However, I've split it up like this exactly for that reason. So let's say that you're planning on running a campaign and you've run one from the core book before, but you like some of the stuff in Black Label. Cool, ask your players what mechanics they want. Ask yourself, like, hey, which ones of these do I want to run? Which ones of these do I not? Pick, I don't know, 4 or 5 pages and just use those. If you're building a character for the first time, or not the first time, but using Black Label for the first time, do the same thing. Pick like 1 or 2 pages, build based on those, see how it works, and then over time, like, build more. Don't try to take the whole system in at one time. It's taken me, God, I don't even know how long at this point. Like this is built up over actual months of
No,
time.
it has. I've been
So
here like when you like made it when it's still a few pages, and then I've and also you can make unholy things with just like one page. But this is but if you combine them, also like you can do some absurd stuff like speaking bounce wise, like Honest Amicio, this thing is a 1d12 plus 39 conditionally against mainly bosses. This, admittedly, it's another one of them where like there's something that deliberately breaks some rules because I thought it was interesting. I do make a lot of things that like break the rules on a very deliberate level, and I just wait and see are people gonna notice this and break it hard enough that I have to whack it with a hammer? And very often the
oh yeah,
answer is like no.
and that is a lot of the like quote unquote mistakes that I'm talking about. Like I'm very, if you take just the words and not the tone behind them, I come off as kind of negative about a lot of things, but that's not really what I'm getting at.
You love this
Like,
mistake.
oh god, that one's one of my favorites.
That's
That
the.
one is one of my favorites. Um,
It is
I call them
disgusting though.
mistakes in a very
This one's
I
disgusting though. I'm sorry.
I
May just
I call them
interject?
mistakes in the same way that you would call like your favorite child a mistake, because it's like, yeah, they give me trouble every now and then, but I love them unconditionally.
Yeah.
Um, like, you're gonna make mistakes, fix them to the best of your ability, but also it's okay to leave a few in. Um, you've got to look at it in terms of like, yeah, there are players out there to break stuff, but 9 times out of 10, players just want to build a character, and giving them a handful of tools that punch above curve uh, like that sounds bad at first because you're like, oh no, one of my characters is going to be more powerful than the others, but it can actually help, especially when you're GMing, because all of a sudden it's like, oops, I made this encounter a little too tough, except now one of my players has a really cool option that they love that is going to see them through it. Like, balance is really hard to talk about because there is absolutely the mechanical, like, you want things to hit at roughly the same number most of the time. At the same time, it's a lot looser of a game than you think it is. There are times where you play by the numbers and write a skill that does nothing, and there are times that you don't play by the numbers at all and write a skill that does everything. Like it's a fun game of. I'm glad for West Marches for giving us as much testing data as we do because it would look so much different without that info.
Yeah. I will also add, like, from my perspective, a lot of the game is, I want to say, hidden in a way. Like, for instance, when I was running Struggle Track, it was a very, like, I don't want to say rude awakening. It's like it was a very sudden adjustment from, like, generally, like, games run by GMs who just, like, want to vibe and also, like, are generally, like, making encounters under, like, the conventional framework to really pushing the limits of the system. And if you're having, like, players that, like, oh, I made this broken thing, etc., that's not the end of the world, because very often I think the first layer of optimization people discover is not actually very good. And this is just my personal opinion here, but it's also a personal opinion that's backed by, I would say, a good amount of evidence. Like, for instance, lots of people that thought they were pretty good at the system and they made lots of broken builds. Like, once they were thrown in a struggle track against the Kurukumo, they mostly crumbled because they didn't learn the system to its core simply because it's just there's not a good setting for it. And so I guess what I'm saying is balancing objectively for players that know everything and, like, know how the system works is, from my opinion, a largely, like, futile task because I do not think you would be able to find a full party, let's say 4 people, that actually fulfill those conditions unless you specifically, like, find them. And if you're big numbers, there's ways around gating it if you are a DM.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
guess the other thing that I would say is like in the event that like you've got someone like let's say you're a relatively inexperienced GM and you've got one player that is like very clearly punching above their weight class, like don't necessarily be afraid to be like, okay, I'm bumping the numbers down on a few skills because I don't know how to design an enemy that or I can't design an enemy that makes this fair because all of my other players are playing at a lower level. At the end of the day, all homebrew is a suggestion, and the best homebrew is the one that works for your game.
yeah, and we're talking about, like, homebrew here, right? I just do want to add that this, like, whole being broken thing is not just a homebrew thing. Like, this is from a previous version of the system.
Think with me?
Well, that one of those things, but, like, there was this strategy called choice. Actually, there is still the strategy called choice, where in the base book, where you take the battle ability promising results, you put a bunch of poise and charge gain, and basically the way that the mechanics works as written is you can reroll a die, and then use poise on the reroll to max roll it. Which means if you use your poise and charge exactly right, you never lose a single clash. In the one test that this was a part of, this won the fight without losing a single clash for the entire 7 rounds.
The
Like,
choice does in fact let you just like, I'm gonna roll the die to see if I get the crit. Oh, I didn't. I get the crit.
yeah, like, and so, like, more on that matter is just, I do want to say, we're talking about brokenness in terms of homebrew, but the base book breaks almost as easily because, not because it was badly designed. I think some people will take, oh, this gets broken, like, possibly as, oh, someone would have made a mistake. This is absolutely false. The thing here is we have an open-ended system where you're putting customizable like amount of modules and like these things that modify skills, which gives you like an unholy large amount of combinations. If you want a number, it's probably in the thousands, right? There's gonna be a few broken things that slip through. Like that's just an inevitability of the math of how systems like this work. And
Even if you were, or I was going to say, even if you were to create a piece of homebrew that is theoretically like mathematically perfect, it's exactly tuned to the core book. There's nothing that's more powerful. There's nothing that's like, undertuned. You play it as safe as you possibly can. Your players are still going to be more powerful because you gave them more choices.
or like you gave them choices and they took them and it made them worse. But that's a possibility.
Theoretically.
Um,
So yeah, okay. So theoretically, your players are going to be more powerful.
Theoretical
The
players.
ceiling, the ceiling still goes up
Oh yeah,
because
100%. Yeah.
now I can put syncing on something that originally I couldn't have, or something like that. So yeah, in theory, the other thing that Ham alluded to there is like sometimes your players are not going to be more powerful no matter what tools you give them, um,
Some
and
people
that's
just
fine
like
too.
aren't there for optimization. They don't like it. They're not willing to do it, or they're choosing not to do it. And I think more power to them. Like I think that's a great way to play the game. Like I'm talking a lot about optimization and talking like, oh, here's how to do make it better, technical analysis. But ultimately, we're here to play a TTRPG and have a good time with friends. And like, if the like technical stuff, like in Moonlit Waltz, if the technical stuff contributes to that and like it's part of the fun, that's awesome. If that's not a part of the experience at all, and you don't want to do that, like that is like an okay line to draw as a DM GM. That's like, don't make your character too much strong in combat. Like, it's just I want to make engaging counter. I'm not too good at that thing, right? Like, it's something you can ask.
Absolutely. And I think that's actually why Black Label has enjoyed this much popularity. There are multiple reasons. One of which is literally just I got in super early and I wrote stuff early enough to where I have a contribution in the main rulebook, and I'm 90% sure that's just because I was early enough to like have eyes on me. Um that I don't necessarily think that that's a
Yeah,
like indicator of, oh, I was doing super quality stuff.
yeah,
It's more just I was doing stuff that was trying to be close to the rule book, and I was like, yeah, no, you can put this in. um
yeah. And same thing here, like my contribution. Like, legitimately, I mean, this is like first of all, I think it's brief digression, if you don't mind. Um,
oh yeah, go ahead.
no, we'll make science find silk. Is the one thing that in the rule book, and I think it's my contribution. It's a very, very interesting like skill. You can do a lot with it. But also like I don't think of it as anything special. Like it's like this. It's just a good skill that made it, right? I think it's just there's. I almost feel like I don't really place too like I personally don't have like have a huge amount of like value tied up in, oh, I have like my name in the main rulebook purely because
Oh yeah, no, I don't either, just because I think it is because I got there super
exactly.
early. um but I guess what I'm trying to say there is like, yes, Black Label Book is popular because I tried to build it in such a way that everyone can find something that they want. It's a product as much for quote unquote everyone as possible. And yet, I have a giant warning on the front page basically saying, hey, this might not be for everyone. There might be stuff in here that breaks things. Um, and that is sort of just the nature of the beast with having so much stuff. But ultimately everything is going to be your mileage may vary. I don't say that like the build for like you can't build for everyone no matter how hard you try.
Oh,
Um
huh. We should probably update this, huh?
oh yeah, probably so. I
We
think I
also
gave up
need to
at some
make.
point and just
Oh yeah, no, that's fair. I also I don't think anyone ever reads this.
I don't think they do. Like
Also, look,
I forget what it
there's no
was.
page three. There's no page three.
Page 3 is real.
Page three is
uh
And I mean,
um
like, while we're on like homebrew, I think do we want to talk about ham spot?
yeah, I'm definitely down.
Okay, Ham's mod. This is what I made for my campaign. A lot of it is campaign specific, but also I rewrote combat a tiny bit, and I rewrote leveling because I wasn't satisfied with how the feat system was written or like the way that old leveling worked with milestones. And I think Ham's mod is the only like near complete rewrite of the system in the sense of like the structure of it that exists. Would that be accurate?
Just a very quick aside. I do think so. One of the smartest things that Hamsmod does, if I'm not mistaken, is instead of agility increasing the size of your die, it gives you a flat like plus something, which
Oh yeah, I
faster characters are consistently faster. Amazing.
this I
Why
will
is that not a
say,
thing?
I made a mistake here, which I will correct later. This should be half of agility, not just agility. This makes fast
Oh,
characters too fast. But
that
the thought's there.
it is. And to be fair, I'm pretty sure you wrote this without the high speed like BLB numbers in mind.
No, it's
And I
also just
like
that like I'm realizing that like one for one is just expecting increasing the expected value more than base book. And I wrote Hamilton as, oh, you can like more or less GM the same as base book. And to that
okay.
and to that extent, I completely rewrote this table, but I yeeted everything else because I yeeted major and minor passives and like sorry, major minor improvements and stat milestones. I had to yeet all the improvements onto miscellaneous over here. So now that you get max light and regen and speed die on a fixed schedule, and that's little story builds and such, I shunted all the more interesting stuff into the passives. And so with like regarding the passives of like Ham's mod, it's very similar to Ruinous Attribution and also similar to a skill tree where they are very discreet. There's you just off like my health hauler, mind hauler, which is like the usual stuff. And if a small note, I do have milestones here, but also if you're using the Hams mod passives, you should not use these milestones. This is a replacement for them. You still have the innate effects though. And so what I really like about Hams mod is this major minor capstone distinction. Um, just structurally, it's very good because what lets you do is it addresses one of the current flaws inside the feat system. I guess we're talking about this now. You cool to be talking about this, Tucci. I think we've strayed a tiny bit, but it's relevant now. Like,
Yeah, I mean, talking about the way the core game is designed and things that we've like quote unquote fixed, at least in terms of quality of life, and to have
yeah,
a
adjust it for.
healthier base
Yeah,
from which to work from.
I will say also
Yeah, I
like
mean,
it's
it's
more
relevant.
technical. Like the thing about Hamsbot, it is technical. It's this should not be like your first experience with the system if you're looking for like a relatively easy to jump in point. But for like because lots of my content, my pages, the Hamsbot, is targeted towards like a group with at least one technically minded player who can navigate all this stuff. For my campaign, it's me. And for like the West March, we have a lot of technical minded players because I think honestly, I think one thing I'm noticing, Sushi, is like people around me just slowly upgrade in system knowledge just because I talk to them a lot. Like,
Which is great because like before I would not consider myself technical at all. I enjoy technical, but usually I am stumbling into things. I'm very much the play with your heart kind of player, where it's like I have a concept for a character going in, or sometimes I don't even have a concept for a character, but it's like I really like this one skill in this book.
yeah,
It doesn't matter if that skill is good or not. I'm just going to build a whole thing around it and try to optimize within that space, but 9 times out of 10 that's not the same kind of optimization that we've been talking about uh,
yeah.
throughout this.
I mean, I will say like the technicality I'm talking about is like being able to see. It's not even like building optimally. It's about anticipating how your skills work in combat and being able to see what an encounter looks like 2 rounds in the future by taking in information right now. I think that's also like a very good skill for both as a GM and as a player because it lets you not because like you should use it to win everything on both sides, but because it lets you steer the encounter towards a satisfying conclusion.
Yes, I don't think I'm allowed to call myself a technical player because of what happened to Sierra and the Hogs.
Okay, you're just fucking around. Okay, let's be real. You're just fucking around. Okay,
To be
that one
fair,
doesn't count.
yes. So that was actually, I guess that's actually something that I should bring up was it's a little tangential, but the reason I did what I did and died on literally the first action of the first scene is because I built Sierra with the idea that she has specific skills used before other skills.
Yeah,
Um,
because
which is
law.
a
Yeah,
very dangerous thing to bring into encounters that are not, which is a very dangerous thing to bring into a ham encounter. The real kick into the teeth is I had a skill that would have avoided death that did the exact same thing, but I was so hung up on doing the thing that I put no thought in whatsoever and
I will
got
say,
punished for
hogs are not a well balanced counter. I am not super proud of this one in like a technical sense, purely because the hogs are a fuck ass encounter that like was literally made by me as a joke. It's like, okay, if you guys want an encounter to redesign, you have three choices. You
it.
Minnow
We may
Spine
have.
from Ultra Kill, View 2, or 500 feral hogs. And people voted for the hogs. So I'm like, I'm just gonna throw 500 hogs at them. The hogs are a very interesting counter. It's just they're theoretically winnable. They're also just like not what you should run as a GM uncalled for.
The hogs are a great gimmick encounter. Um, but the fact that a character died scene one, turn one after taking what is theoretically a reasonable action should tell you everything you need to know about the
Do not
hogs.
run the hogs. Do not run the hogs. Like,
But I guess that too is like this variety in encounter design. Like again, homebrew can be whatever you want it to be.
yeah,
Like we are giving you an example because there aren't as many examples of like BLB coded stuff, I guess. There's a lot of
yeah,
examples of like, I want to do the really cool thing. There's a lot of examples of like, hey, this is my favorite mechanic, so I'm going to give it all the toys in the toolbox forever. Um, and both of those are totally fine. Uh, do what you want to do. Just, I guess what this is primarily just like, hey, look at all these mistakes I've made. Please don't make them.
yeah, definitely. And back to Ham's mod. The flaw I'm talking about, like in the feed system, which is like only a flaw because I think the feats and like the system in general is targeted towards a general audience that isn't aimed for high-end technical play, or like just does not have people that think about this kind of thing. And so it's designed more to be easily like understandable and like jump inable than standing up to serious like technical scrutiny. What I was talking about before was basically all the feats are treated exactly the same except for the prerequisites. So what you can do is you rush a high stat early and then just get like a bunch of high requirement feats, which in theory are stronger. And just suddenly what happens is because you have four feat slots and you want to fill them up all with like high requirements feats, how strong your character is feat wise is dependent entirely on how many distinct feats are available inside the book for you to take. And just like on a like technical level, that's not a super healthy environment because it devalues lower just these lower level feats over here.
And
Um
like it looks initially like there are a decent number of choices, but it boils down very quickly to the power levels differences between them are so huge that it really isn't nearly as many choices as you think. A character that isn't taking at least halfway optimal choices here is going to fall off way faster in a way that like quote unquote suboptimal skills would not cause them to drop off.
yeah, and
Um,
like one of the like the real super strong things I want to highlight very quickly is what you can do is so basically you have a +1 over here for to a stat, and you have one feat over here. You put the one inside I want to say persona. You put this +1 in persona, so you have six persona because you have four as a starting stat, four starting stat per persona, skilled, which you want to take anyways. Because if you're looking at skilled over here, it does a bunch of other things other than increasing the stat. So you take that for persona, you take the +1, and then at level 4, you take the passive Efflorescence Ego, and you just get a free Ego passive. Always. In addition
which
to your base Ego passive, which you can get. It's just incredibly strong.
it's really good. Hilariously, like technically speaking, there's an archetype in BLB that lets you do almost the same thing, but with more limitations. So a lot of it boils down to the reason why these feats are the reason why we both decided like no we're gonna stick with 4 for a while or 0.4 for a while is yes there are a lot of options but there are correct options and you that is where the line is for me in terms of homebrew design. I want to give players a ton of options. If I give them a correct option, I have taken away every other option they have.
For instance, this one, like Slash Pierce and Blunt, like it's this is slashing styles just better than the other two. Blunt is especially bad. Slashing style lets you get ultra advantage on your roll. Just because. And that is very strong. Like
Yeah, like also how like on top of that it's like okay, I'm going to build a slash charge build and I'm going to choice. I'm just never going to suffer ever again.
it's arguably choice is better for the other ones, like as a side note probably, because there's diminishing returns when stacking with slashing style. If you want to be purely technical
That's
about it.
that's true because this is once per scene, but even so it's
It's still obscene, yeah. Like,
like 3 times is
yeah, it's a lot.
I mean, honestly, I kind of wish slashing style was like having one automation, but that's kind of beside the point.
Yeah, anyway, so like, and what Hamlet's mod, I think I made this before the feat system of SOTC to be clear. But why I like it still better than the official one is because it separates out the passives into minor and major. It gives you number one, it replaces relatively like generic things like minor improvements and major improvements with these specific build specific things that lets your character really like have a very specific identity.
Most people are already thinking of their builds as, oh, I am this ailment or this status. So leaning into that a bit with these sorts of things is actually really good.
And
Um,
also like there's
because
very
players are
interesting
already
combos.
doing.
Like for example, one cool tree is again like there's this force field, which is charge, and then solidarity, which is it gets strength for allies being alive, which arguably is like pretty good. But anyways, but that goes into leading the charge, which is a Ruina thing that for having charge you buff everyone. And Capstone's a side note. This seems very strong. This you get this at level 20. Like at that point, like it's fine. But the whole point is like with like these type this kind of structure of major minor capstone, you have a lot more room to maneuver and explore with different effects and really homogenize the power level, which homogenization sounds bad, but it's making sure everyone is on the same page in power in combat. And I just generally highly value that. And the other thing that like I relatively dislike about the current system is simply because it's really easy to stumble into like making a broken build. He's like, oh, I like skilled, I want to increase my favorite stat. I want to increase my big favorite stat. So like persona, I want them to be real charismatic. Oh, what do I take at this level? What can I take? Ooh, ego passive sounds very cool. And then if you take like a very strong ego passive, all of a sudden you're a good portion stronger than the other characters that didn't go this like specific thing. Like with which is like skilled and then a +1 in stat for +6 at level 4 into one of the feats that require 6 that are good. It's like I've heard like in response like, oh, like people aren't going to be looking to like make something broken. And like I agree to an extent, but also for homebrew, my points of criticism are often like this could potentially be very broken if you do it with Facebook, right? And that's relatively strict. For Facebook, because it's aimed more towards general audience, my standards are a bit less strict. I just don't think you should make it so like people get accidentally broken. Like,
Yeah, my general criteria for, again, like anything like this, especially as far as Facebook goes, um, I like a lot of the ideas behind this, but again, I don't like the existence of a correct choice. Like slash, because of slashing style, is going to be better in than your other types now, simply because its passive is better. And like, yeah, I could build a character. I could build a character that's from the middle, and they're all about blunt, and that's great. But I'm still, if I notice that slash is better as a player, I'm going to be like, oh man, why don't I get that? Um,
as a side note, sharpened blade, I personally really think I should just this should be, you should be able to change this. Like,
I that is actually one thing that I was like slowly circling in on. If the damage type proficiencies allowed you to pick the proficiency and the effect, like if those effects were tied to not a singular type but allowed you to pick the type, that problem would not exist. The same thing kind of exists with sharpened blade, and I definitely get the appeal of like, you want slash dice to have an identity, you want pierce dice to have an identity, but because of the way they're implemented, I think you want to give them an identity in other ways. You don't want to tie it just to which type it is. Like, if all else equal, if all of my options that affect my dice I can put on either of those three types, but then I want to use a unique skill that's poison, or actually, better example, curse. Curse has a lot of like pierce specific stuff. Um, so that's where I get my identity from. Is I'm getting it from the thing that people are already staking a lot of their identity into, which is curse. And now I get to flavor my pierce however I want, and I still benefit for having a certain identity. Uh, Stuff like that is where you get really into the weeds, and I'm not going to say that my thoughts on that are correct. Do what you want with your own homebrew. Do what you want with, you know, identifying things like that. If you prefer things be very separate and these dice always feel different from one another, go for it. Uh, I just think it's a little healthier for players to not feel like they have made an incorrect decision for something that they picked for flavor reasons.
100%. Like that's why like for the version for we're using for West March, we're using home weapon instead, which is offensive dice type agnostic. As one of like the very few Facebook changes we do.
Yes.
Yeah. In terms of like building, I mean like okay, I feel like this is edgy enough. But let's talk about building homebrew, like because there is like I feel like a trend in some like in which is like in like relatively I think a good amount of people which they want to make a nuke skill that like how to put it, like that destroys like a single enemy, and like their infrastructure around the nuke skill is relatively weak, and so what we have is like a character with a very uneven power curve in which like they annihilate a single enemy and they just become useless for the rest of combat or even like for
Yeah,
like 1 or 2 rounds.
they're gonna drop this crazy huge skill that deals a bunch of damage and either like kills an ad or does a ton of damage to the ego or boss and possibly staggers them. But then they spend like 2 turns having to, okay, now I got to use my light recovery skill, and okay, now I've got to clear the burn I put on myself or something before I can do that thing again. Um, and the other thing with nuke skills that I don't think a lot of people are cottoning onto is, yes, big number great, and theoretically biggest number great, but 9 times out of 10, you don't get a lot out of pumping literally everything into the nuke skill. You start hitting diminishing returns because is there really a difference between doing 22 damage and 36 damage in most cases?
No, not really.
Not
Like, unless you're clashing against a 30, in which case, why is the GM throwing a 30 against you? Like, that's more of like a out of combat. Can we talk about this? Why are you designing your enemy that way more than the in character? I gotta prepare for this way.
Yeah, there definitely comes a point where your numbers are big enough and you would be better suited saving those like spare rank ones and twos for your quote unquote return or recovery turn skills, and making them more than a recovery turn skill.
Yeah. Like, for instance, just like in pure Black Label book terms, because I think a good amount of people watching would like be interested in like Black Label book and like building it and that kind of thing. Is just to target towards you guys. There's ways to build around nuke skills that are more healthy. Like this is probably the closest I've been to building a pure nuke character. You've seen this, Sushi. This is
Yes,
terrifying. Against most
it is in fact
bosses,
a horrifying skill.
this is a 1d12 plus 39. It's very horrifying. But more importantly, what happens is the downside from it, gaining burn, is negated by the safeguard, and also this paralyze you gain from it is cycles into this skill, which becomes a mini boundary of death. And you can just stably cycle these two. Like, it's okay to have a nuke skill. I think actually having a nuke skill is fine. But also, if you're going to build around a nuke skill, for the love of God, build a competent character attached to that nuke skill that synergizes with it rather than just building a nuke skill.
Like even just having a plan outside of your nuke skill is relatively important. One of my own characters that does this correctly, I would say, is Fuka. Her entire thing is using extreme focus with Boundary of Death, using the same like cheat functionally that I had. Um, and like that is her loop functionally, is channeling inner demons. It's using the frightening trick into Crush Claw Swipe, which is just going to be a 20 every single time because it's paying 5 poise into Boundary of Death. That is her nuke, quote unquote. And the rest of her kit is reasonably defensive. There are still things that it's doing. It's building sinking the whole time to make that better. Um, there are things that I can do that are not my nuke, and I'm not spending a whole bunch of time like literally helpless. The only scenario in which I'm quote unquote helpless is if I fire channeling inner demons twice in a row and then have like almost no light. But even then, I still have a reasonably good panic defense. I have a different shape that I can use through Windmill Slam. Um, I have plans for when I'm not able to fire the nuke. My plan is not get to nuke, fire nuke, repeat.
Yeah. And I will say this is not even just a homebrew thing. Like I'm seeing this a lot in like Facebook builds as well, like very often. Or like because I think what happens like in this community sometimes is that like the flashiest, the coolest things, like, oh, look at that skill does this much damage, right? And everyone like imitates that. And like it just leads to this feedback loop where like loop. It leads to this feedback loop where I'm just and this is just like I'm just describing what I've seen like as a general trend. This may or may not be entirely accurate by the time it's out. This might not entirely be accurate, but I'm just describing what I'm seeing is that people are emphasizing these like big skills and like these like oh look at how the numbers big, whereas I'm noticing that in sessions they are not performing as well like in combat. Like when you're put against harder encounters or encounters that actually challenge you in some other way that isn't beat big number, they often crumble. And like, and I don't come from a place of I think that this is bad or I think it's bad like bad that like if you like big numbers. I'm coming from a place of if you want to get better at this system, you want to like be good. I sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Like if you're chasing system mastery and you want to have very high effectiveness in combat, the most if that the most important thing is not to make a flashy skill. The most important thing is to understand perfectly the circumstances you are put under. Understand how your kit works, understand how the base system works, understand how things clash, and
It's
using
the
that
difference
understanding to
between
make
like
a very cohesive skill set that lets you address every single situation like perfectly. Like, for example, like you saw like when like I was having my characters fight Soldier of Fortune, right? At a level
yeah,
way below that Soldier of Fortune was rated for, it actually just tore Soldier of Fortune apart without like a single chance for it to resist. Like, and that's because
yes,
their strength, or rather like my strength as a player, does like in terms of like being good at combat, does not come from my skill, like come from like big skills. It comes from number one, just like having like actual skill in the game outside of like the character skills, and also building that skills in such a way that lets me take advantage of that. And that's I think where like
and I
you get like a lot of power. Sorry, continue, Sushi.
well, I was gonna say, and I think this is actually kind of baked into BLB and some of my thoughts on homebrew. It is in a lot of situations okay to have big number because that's what most people are most excited about. It's the thing that they're actively going for. Like you want to make the access to that conditional. You don't want to just give everybody a D20 because you feel like it. But if you're going to break one of the rules, allowing players to find these cool interactions where they get big numbers is usually fine because it's not the most powerful thing that you can do. It feels very powerful. It feels great. Most people want to do it. The thing that actually breaks and the thing that is more important to do is you want to be maximizing what you get out of every single point of light. Um,
Yeah,
that is the reason why a broken zero cost or a one cost does so much more damage to the system in general than like a broken three or four cost.
yeah. For instance, like let's go back to Line Cook Larry. We talked about this earlier. Line Cook Larry isn't broken because he does a lot of damage, like or nukes things. Like the most broken thing is not like the infinite skill. It's the fact that this is zero light and he infinitely spams this. The most broken thing in that book, I still believe, is not this stupid check that scales your damage of basically exponentially. It's the fact that you get free light recovery. Um, there's a few things that lots of people in homebrew they touch instinctively almost like they touch. Oh, this is more ways to regain life. This is a skill you reuse. This is a die you reuse. What did I miss? There's like one other thing I missed. You fuck with light economy. You fuck with skill reuse. You fuck with dice reuse. I think those
Yeah,
are the big three.
anytime that you're reusing a die because then you get your module effects for functionally free.
Yeah,
Anytime you're reusing a skill, anytime you're cheating speed dice,
right.
or
That's the fourth
e-
one. Yeah,
even even light cost can be kind of terrifying. There's a reason
yeah.
why extreme focus costs 3 and only copies of 1, because even if you didn't have the ability to drop costs using that funky module, the ability to copy a 2 is too good for it's like, oh, you're paying 1 light for 4 poise,
Yeah.
and that's still really good. um you have to be really careful with those effects that let you cheat cost. I'd even say like copying dice can be pretty scary, not
Well, no,
necessarily
copying even
cloning them.
so, right? Yeah. Like I will also
It's
say
like,
like I want to expand on what like something that you brought up. When you're using the dice, you are basically cloning every single module. So like here, this is a better way to example because this is a better version of the sheet. So you have a limited amount of module. This dictates your power usually because like modules typically correlate directly to how powerful a skill is because every single module you put on a skill makes it more powerful. If you're reusing a die, you're cloning every single module on that die along with that die, and you're effectively cheating this number.
I think it was like old flurry. There was a skill that I had written that basically reused a die like 3 times.
Oh,
And
I
just
sorry, I can get exactly that at a moment. Give me a moment. No,
um
because
while
I think this
while
was
you're
it was old Carmine that used it, remember?
I think so.
It was this
Just
one.
to preface this, imagine putting R3 neurotoxin
This one.
one hit, one paralyze, and so suddenly you're getting 3 rank 3s off of that.
This one. This is the skill.
Like, oh
Remember
yeah,
this?
reuse this die 3 times, and then every single module you put on that is literally tripling or actually quadrupling in value. Um, and there was no restriction on that. There was no safety on that. Um, and I'm like, yeah, copying a die over and over, it's the same thing as writing it out. It shouldn't be a problem. No, it's a huge problem.
Yeah, and
Like
then
that is one of the cardinal rules that if you're going to break it very gently. There isn't a in homebrew. There's no rule that you can't break, but if you break too many too hard, the end result is not going to be like even it might be fun to look at, but it will not be fun to use.
and then like the no the like let's talk about that. Speed ice cheating. We talked about this with Inescapable Gates. It has been nerfed 3 times, and it's still, in my opinion, one on the top 3 most busted skills in this entire fucking book.
It's like, hey, you can only use it in interception, so surely it would be fine to maybe not have a speed die be used for that. But that not using a speed die for an action is so good that that restriction is almost meaningless.
Which
Like,
was why we added this one.
yep.
And then uppercut palm strike. This motherfucker right here. We can talk about this one. This one used to be in the top 10 most fucked up. Because we were talking about how like making a low cost skill busted. This is an example of indirect light cost cheating because this used to be this. No, it used to be this, right?
I don't remember.
No, it used to be I think a plus
It might have been
four, I or
four.
plus three. Anyway, so the problem with this is this used to be just max roll if you have poise, which means it was just a flat 8 on a 0 cost, which was theoretically unachievable before. Um, and then it got nerfed, and then we said, oh, what if we can only maximize with 1 point? You put potential on it, it's still broken. And finally got turned to this form. And I was like, wait, no, this is still too good, and so we nerfed it down to 1d4 plus 2. This is still more tremor than you can find from a 0 cost. This is still breaking the cost rule, young rule.
And the best part about it is players do not look at this skill.
It is
Um,
fucked up. Like, it is so fucked up.
this is a great example of one of those take feedback with a grain of salt, although this is not the same kind, because players don't usually look at this because it's not big numbers, it's not flashy, it does something kind of cool, but generally you're looking at it in terms of like, oh, I can spend one less poise to maximize this and inflict a little bit of trimmer. Oh no, that's weak. But it's really not. It's just that it's not the flashy thing that a lot of
Breaks
people
shit.
want to do.
Yeah, flashy things, a lot of flashy things break things. A lot of subtle things also break things. And if you're a homebrew creator, you cannot afford to overlook the subtle things. Like, oh, sorry, you
Honestly,
can, but also
it's
like
usually
be
the
prepared for the
subtle things
consequences.
that break things harder.
Yeah,
Like
because I remember like
the
lots of the
flashy
things I point out to Tsuchi, like because when we're collaborating, it's like, oh, this is like at this cost, this effect, you cannot do this because it is just flat out better than putting a module on it and invalidates like a base skill. Like how many times have I like told that feedback on a skill, and for you to
Oh yeah,
change it?
there was an entire minor numbers update because I had put so many terrible numbers, mostly on this early page because back then I still thought that
Yeah,
uniques were
and on
even
similar numbers
powerful.
thing, do not leave uncapped power skilling. Do not leave anything uncapped. Cap nearly
Even if you
everything,
don't think you need it, even if you think
just
there's
in
no
case.
way they could hit this maximum, like
For
there are.
instance, this which motherfucker do we show? I think this one, right?
I was
Uh,
gonna say I don't remember any specifically offhand, but I know there are plenty.
This motherfucker. This used to be uncapped.
Yeah, so if you had like 7 thorns, that was just
1d8
that
plus
was
8.
yep.
Lovely. Note, however, real quick, this is still uncapped because it's basically like it's same as Thorns. Like Clash Win, still do Thorns. This is fine.
Yeah,
Just
there are times where you don't need a maximum where it's like you literally cannot like uh, where the hoops you would have to jump through to abuse the fact that it's uncapped are so far out there that you could do so much worse with those same hoops. You
yeah,
generally don't have to cap stuff like that, but you do have to cap more things than you think you do.
yeah.
If
And
you
then
don't
talk
think
about
you have to cap it, that you think no one will ever reach, and it's better.
yeah. Another thing, dice reuse. Sorry, there's a dice reuse. This this thing, this thing has caused so many problems. It is still kind of a problem. This motherfucker.
Uh, was that the one where there was a time that it was a rank 2?
No, recycling was never ranked two. It's the crit
Yeah.
just crit and use to survive without a cap. We've deliberately kept it this way. It's also very strong. Like,
Oh yeah, it is ridiculously good.
give me a moment. Something has fell. I do not know what it is. Oh, I know what fell. Sorry, continue.
Um, like again, that's one that looks kind of innocuous and kind of like, oh, that's a really fun effect, and it is fun. The problem is, it's like if you find a way to either poise loop this or just get a bunch of crits off of it. Remember, any like rank 1 that you're attaching to this is going to be copied and made more valuable. Um, like this can get out of hand really quickly on the right skill. And I think the only reason we've gotten away with not having to cap it is one, R3s are a little hard to get to, and two, this falls in that category of I'm going to build a nuke skill more so than it falls into the category of I'm going to build something so efficient that there is no beating it.
Yeah, and also this is surprisingly a hard restriction to work around. It's from my view, this is on the edge of being broken, but also it's fine enough because everything around it is okay. Like every something can be contextually broken. Everything have context. There's nothing that is broken in isolation. It's either broken in
Yeah,
context because there's something around that enables it, or it's broken in context because it's better at something than everything else around it. Everything have
this is
context.
that is one of the main reasons why when you're thinking about your homebrew, I don't recommend I recommend having a copy of the base book open and like nothing else because trying to balance homebrew around other homebrew is a fool's errand. There's just no way.
God,
Um, Adding multiple homebrews to the same campaign is very similar. Like
yeah,
there's gonna be interactions that no one has come across before that like, oh, this homebrew is really good and really balanced, and this other one is also really good and really balanced. And then I put them together, and there's one module in the one that completely breaks this unique from the other one, and it was a nightmare. Like that is super common.
Uh,
Oh
so
no,
as
I see
an
what you're pulling up.
example of one of this, there was this campaign called Tower. It combined a bunch of homebrews together. Some of them were questionably balanced than others, but the end result, I I won't speak for other characters. They basically made a bunch of new skills, but what I did is I made, for example, this thing that just deletes a dice and then hits you. This thing nullifies. This is actually nothing major. This is just base hack Deja's Pathrazer, but with more power. This is just highlighting hack Deja's Pathrazer is just broken. Clash Win destroy the opponent's remaining offensive dice basically says I do not care what the other skill is. If I win the first clash, I win the entire skill. The entire skill that gets deleted.
Yeah,
It's a
like
fucked
you're
up
not
effect.
taking damage out of it.
Because the fact that I don't do anything unopposed. And then I also made this thing which rolls a 100, which is high even for the tower, with fucked up scaling. And also this used to use Waffle House, which we're not gonna go into because we already said it. But like, essential is like, don't mix homebrew unless you know what you're doing. Homebrew was not written with other homebrew in mind. In my personal opinion, it should not be. Purely because if you start running with homebrew with other homebrew in mind, that isn't like one specific homebrew, but like, oh, like this needs to work well with every other homebrew. It is a fool's errand that will eat your time with nothing to result from it, likely. Like, this isn't like me saying like you are bad if you do this. I'm like, please do not do this and save yourself. That's what I'm going for here. Like,
If if you really like, let's say there's homebrew that you really like, or even regardless if it's like Black Label book or not, um, you can definitely build around what's there if you want to, but I wouldn't stress too much about like if I was to build around a homebrew, what I would probably do is take a look at that homebrew and try to build things that I feel like it's missing that are analogous to what's already there. If I were to build a homebrew around something like Waffle House, everything I build would be insane. If I were to build homebrew, like functionally, what I did was I built homebrew around the base book, and that's why it sometimes plays nicely with the with the base book.
hmm. I also will say,
Uh,
give me a moment. No, give me a moment. What was this? No. So another thing I want to kind of like highlight real quick is the fact that every single module interacts with almost every other module means essentially that, let's just say, like, yeah, this is a good curve. The more modules you add, and the more modules are in the base book, the more interactions you have to account for. If you template your modules in a way that they don't interact, this is fine. Black Label Book has a lot of modules that interact. If you plan on doing this, please be aware that every single module you add is potentially going to exponentially increase in complexity because it interacts with everything else. You're building a tower. Like, have you ever like Sushi? Like, you know, like that game Jenga, right? You like it's
yes,
stable at first, and then the more you add on, like the heart
the taller the tower, the worse it gets to have to balance it when a piece gets removed or added.
or added, yeah. Same thing for like Black Label Book. This is the reason why I personally think Black Label Book is a fucking masterpiece. Is it's a balanced Jenga tower to the fucking skillet. There are
It,
homebrews out there that I think do a lot of interesting things that are generally very fascinating. I think there's a lot of homebrews out there that like have a large amount of modules. I have yet to see a single homebrew yet, and again, might be a limitation of what I'm seeing and not seeing, but like just in my community, I have not seen another homebrew be this balanced while being this tall. Like, I just want to just
and
publicly
the
like express like I think I want to credit Sushi for this a lot. Like this, I helped a lot with a lot of the finer details, but ultimately was mostly the chicken over here. Like,
yeah, like I definitely appreciate your praise, and I definitely think that like you have definitely helped me immensely. I don't want to undersell that, but I have I routinely say like, oh, I've made mistakes, I'm an idiot, blah blah blah. A lot of that is so that I don't come off as some sort of like intimidating being that is god of all homebrew, because I don't want that to be the
I also
perception.
don't think that's necessarily
Um,
true. It's just like this specific
no,
time that is like the peak of. Like,
um,
yeah.
but I definitely like I definitely have more experience and things like that that have helped me make this what it is. I just don't ever want someone to look at that and be like, ah, I'm discouraged because someone has done this better than I ever will. Because
Well,
that's not true. I can only
exactly.
do this because I've done it so much. Get out
And the
there and
other
do
thing
it.
is like And
Make homebrew.
and why we're here, right? I want to say like the reason we're here, God, because you know how much APC you fucking run, Tucci? You run session after session, weekend after weekend,
I
just
did. I
testing
ran
everything.
literally a session a week just to make sure. Like, and people would routinely the early stages of testing Black Label Book were, hey, I've added some stuff. I'm gonna run a boss encounter this week. I want you guys to bring broken stuff. Please attempt to break my game.
Yeah,
And they did, and I fixed it, and then they broke it again, and then I fixed it. Like,
yeah,
there was a lot of effort put into this.
yeah.
I'm not saying that you have to dedicate your next like 3 months worth of weekends to running tests,
It could
but
be very fun though.
it could be, and you definitely do want to test your homebrew uh, in some way, shape, or form. You definitely want more than one person. Like, no one person is a mountain. Black Label Book would not be what it is without the Punching Club, without Ham, like, without all of the players that have played it, and without all of the people who've come to me and said one of two things, which is, hey, I built this and it's terrifying, please fix it, or hey, can I get this module because I really want this. Like,
Like
the
real like a
hype
mentality,
and
road
the
entire ass
support.
page. Like this.
Yes. And like the guest pages are great. I love the guest pages. I love being able to include stuff like that to
Yeah,
prove that it is like this is not just me.
yeah.
Um, you know,
Yeah, no, this is like the
when you're
product
starting
of
out,
like a community, like Black Label Book, very much. Like not like in the sense that like it's a product of a community within the SOTC community that was just testing it, giving feedback, etc. Like I would like and like even like as the one like the current like relatively major contributors, I was just the guy that came in at the end and did the finishing touches, arguably. Like if in the large sense.
like yeah, it feels weird to be in this position because I never thought I would be in this position. And I'm not going to say that like some of it wasn't luck because again, I got in early. I put in a lot of work, but I started at a good time. Um, but yeah, no, like you don't have to make homebrew at this scale, and I don't know that I necessarily recommend it. But don't try to be the mountain. Don't try to be the one person. Test things. Let players look at it. You know, take advice with a grain of salt, but don't be afraid to kill your darlings. I could probably just spout any amount of words here about the experience that I've had so far.
Yeah, no, it's been
Um,
great. Yeah.
so instead of doing that, I will say that like if you're doing something homebrew related and you want another set of eyes on it, remember I am not good at math. I'm going to potentially steer you the wrong way, but I'm more than happy to be that second set of eyes. I'm more than happy to help. Um, you
Yeah.
know, even though I'm not necessarily like literally always available, um, come to me with questions, concerns. I do not want to be the imposing like guy on the mountaintop.
Yeah.
If you climb the mountain and send me a DM, I will dispense questionably sagely advice for you.
I cannot claim the same availability. It's purely because I just do not have like as much social energy, I think, for like relative strangers. Not that like I think whoever's watching is a stranger, like that's a bad thing. It's just like my energy is a bit more limited. But like you'll see me
Oh yeah,
around.
if I
I
don't
might like
respond,
drop a comment. Like
oh yeah, and like if I don't respond, it's probably because something like that has happened. Just poke me again in a couple of days, and
yeah.
as long as you're respectful, as long as you're not like one of those people that show up out of nowhere and be like, "Hey, did you look at it yet? Did you look at it yet? Did you look at it yet?" Like that's totally
Yeah. And I mean like one thing that I definitely can do and I think is like more actionable is like leave a comment on the video like about what video I should make less next and it's like and like definitely that's a lot more feasible for me. It's just like oh, I'll just get one of my friends on and we'll talk SOTC or we'll talk like some specific thing about SOTC and that'll be relatively helpful and that'll reach more people and like that's also part of why like I started this like video content series slash audio content series. It's just like I don't have it in me to like talk to like 10 people about the same thing. But I have it in me to like record a video with a friend talking about it, you know?
fine. Oh, absolutely, and I'm definitely glad you had me on.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
this is
that's it's
something
like a
that
good time to like end, I think, honestly. think we've said like a
Yeah,
lot.
I think we've I think we've
Uh,
covered most of our bases here. And again, if there's something that we didn't cover, we've left enough
yeah.
room for people to ask that. So
Also, though, like if you are a DM and you want to use Ham's mod, have some questions about it, I specifically am will be free to like do a breakdown on this if people want. This is my darling. I don't talk a lot about it because I don't think this is a thing that like most new campaigns, which is why I see a lot of like people talking about should be using. But if you determine you are in a position where like you want to do this and you think it's great, like do let me know in the comments and like especially with like questions and stuff, and I will either like answer them in the comments. I might ask you, oh, just contact me on Discord, or like if there's enough interest, I will make a whole ass other video on this and about why it's great and what its problems are, and if it's for you, how's best to run it, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
absolutely. I guess for closing remarks, I'd just like to say, again, get out there and make homebrew. Don't be afraid to mess up because you're going to no matter what, and you're you're going to come out more interesting for those mess ups. Um, you're going to have more fun because of the mess up. Get out there, like make people see it, test, and don't don't do as much as I did because I've been here for months now,
Yeah.
and I
Closing remarks. Yeah. I think one main thing like I want to touch on like homebrew's great. I think this would not be what it is if there wasn't a community to use it. There wasn't a community to create it. Get involved in the community. I think the start this like the West March community is generally great. I think the main server, like the Jakafongs, like SOTC server, like just has great vibes. Come and hang out, and like just do more SOT stuff because I think this is legitimately a really interesting system. Like if I think I've been like hyper obsessed with like two TTRPG systems in my life. Number one was a fuck ass Tower of God system that is god awful and I wish upon no one. And the second is this, and it's a much healthier relationship I have with it. I want to thank again Sushi for coming on. You've been
absolutely.
a great guest. You've been a great collaborator. I look forward to like the things we do together. Like and running the West March honestly has been very fun, and I'm glad you've been shouldering a lot of the death work because honestly I feel with the loss of West March, I am just the one in the like center like calling the shots. Like literally everyone else is doing a lot of the work, and you are definitely carrying a lot of the system burden system wise and also like homebrew wise.
Oh, and
Um,
I'm just over here looking at people approving sheets like, oh, thank God they're doing that because I don't know how many of those I can do. But
yeah,
seriously, we do have a lot of people active in the community doing their own parts, and
yeah.
I am very happy to be a part of that community.
All right. And I think that'll be it. All right. See you guys next
Awesome.
time for like God knows what the next episode will be, but it'll be about something.
Next time on Dragon Ball Z, right?
Yep, exactly.